Welcome to part two in what I think might become an ongoing series of videos about ERP transactions in Acumatica. At least if Acumatica continues what seems to be a trend of increasingly focusing on this area and causing customers to need to increase the amount that they pay for the software if they're over their ERP transactions. Thank you to Aaliyah and Mike from Acumatica for their lightning fast response to my post on the community forums. And this is a follow-up video to cover why we were getting two ERP transactions in a situation where I thought there should be one. All right, so last time we had on the process invoices and memo screen, we had an automation schedule. You can see I've deactivated that and it hasn't been running since yesterday, July 9th. It's now July 10th. And as a reminder, this is East Coast time. I'm on the West Coast right now, which is why you see a difference there. So that's not a factor anymore. And someone did point out to me that, is it really an automation schedule thing? And the answer is no. So that's good because it behaves the same whether it's automation schedule or not. And let's take a look at where we're at with our ERP transactions right now. We can see that the automation schedule has processed 14, and then I've done some testing on my own since the last video. So through the UI, we've got 16. So just remember these two numbers, 14 and 16. All right, so let's go ahead and do a new invoice. And let's do 3 invoices. So I'm going to copy this one and we'll paste it. So we'll do, for some reason I like changing the numbers, so we'll do 1. Oh, wait a second, I'm sorry, wanted to do a different invoice. Let's do this one. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. All right, then if we come back to our license monitoring console, I wish there was like a little X in the upper right here, but you have to scroll all the way down, hit this OK button. All right, we were at 83. I just put in 3 invoices. If I refresh, I'm now at 86. So that part makes sense to me. I went up by 3. But then the issue we had from the last video is that here's our 3 now in the screen, and I'm going to prove that the automation schedule does not matter. I can do this manually. So let's go ahead and release these 3. And since I'm updating the invoice and ERP transactions do get incremented whether you're creating a document or updating a document, I was expecting my ERP transaction count to go up. So I was at 86. I was expecting it though to go to 89. But instead, you can see it's doubling up. It's going to 92. And as Mike Resef pointed out on the community post, the reason for that, you can see down here, this is where the culprit is. This stayed the same at 14, but this went up by 6. The reason for that is on this document details tab, you can actually see the individual transactions. You have a pretty good amount of visibility here. And what happens is at 11, 13, and 38 seconds, that's when the 3 invoices got updated. I was expecting that, but I was not expecting a second later the GL batches get generated. Now, I did know that. I just wasn't expecting them to count against the ERP transactions. So that's the reason for the doubling up. It's the updating of the invoice and the generating of the GL batch. That's why we come up with 6 instead of 3 for the increase. So we do have visibility into that. I don't know that I like that, mainly because I wasn't expecting it. And, I think it takes a lot, or took a lot, for Acumatica to get people used to the commercial transactions. Now the ERP transactions, in my opinion, are even more mysterious. Although it does make me start to wonder on the commercial transaction side. Yeah, I don't know. Are these? Yeah, you don't see GL batches here, so I don't know. That's maybe for another video. But ERP transactions are even stranger because this unexpected extra documents or extra counts, not even documents, extra ERP transactions that are getting counted. And so I actually came up with another scenario that I want to cover in this video that's even stranger. So that one was strange to me because it counted twice when I was expecting it to count once. Let's go ahead and take a scenario where we walk through taking an order, create a shipment, create an invoice. I'm thinking in my head that it's three things: an order, a shipment, an invoice. Now that I know about the GL batch, all right, let's give it a fourth thing. So we'll call it four things, right? So let's take it through that process, and let's keep an eye on the ERP transactions at each step in the process. So right now, before we do anything, we're at 92. So I'm going to put starting point of 92. Okay, so let's do this. Now, I'm not going to make any changes. I'm just going to, I don't know why I'm getting this. I'm not going to make any changes. I'm just going to create documents and then process them. So let's do a order. Like that. We'll save it. So we've got an open order. We go to our license monitoring console. We were at 92. If we refresh this, we're now at 93. So no problem there. I expected that. Of course, if we made changes to the order, it would also, like added additional lines, put in a customer order number, whatever. It would increment the ERP transactions as well, but I won't do that. So now I'm just going to create a shipment. Now here's another situation where I'm thinking, hey, one new transaction, I should go from 93 to 94. But if I refresh this, you can see I go from 93 to 95. But now that we have this new tool that, thank you, Mike Ruseff, pointed out for me, I can see why it did that. So it created a shipment. There's the shipment, but it also counted the order. And now that I see this, I understand why. And the reason is, if we look at the order was open with an open status. But now that there's a shipment on it, it has a status of shipping. But we just got dinged twice when I was only expecting to get dinged once. All right, and then let's take it further. So, of course, you would put in your actual quantities picked. And once you figure that all out, you would confirm the shipment. So we'll do the confirm. No new documents here. I'm just confirming a shipment. And if I go back here, I was at 95. Now I'm at 97. So I just jumped by 2 again. And this one's the same situation because I have a shipment that got updated, but it also updated the order again, because if I come back to the order, I first was open, then I was shipping, and now I have a status of completed because the shipment has been confirmed. So I got dinged twice there. Now we'll prepare the invoice. And we'll check our ERP transactions again. So we've got a new invoice, hasn't been released yet. Come back here. We were at 97. Yikes, now we just jumped by 3. And let's take a look at this. So invoice I expected. The shipment also got updated. And if we look at the shipment, that's because the status got updated to invoiced. All right, makes sense. The order part, though, if we come back here, we can see the order also gets included in what is quickly becoming a very liberal ERP transaction counter. Why the order got updated, let's see. Did this change? no, that's still completed. There might be some like invoiced quantity fields that are getting updated in here. I don't know for sure. That's the only thing I can think of. But I definitely wasn't expecting that. I thought the order was done, it was happy, but now the order got updated just with the creation of an invoice. Okay. Not so great, but okay. All right, so we're at 100 now. So now let's do the releasing of the invoice. And here's what we learned last time, or not last time, earlier in this video. We learned that the releasing, whether you do it through that process, invoice transactions with an automation schedule, or like we did earlier in the video, manually on that process invoices and memo screen, or like I'm doing here, just individually on the invoice. Doesn't matter how you do it. What happens in the background is the same. Except now, we just went from 100 to 106. I thought it was the same. Now I'm really freaking out. Let's see. We just went up by 6. Okay. Now I'm seeing it. All right, so the example I did earlier in the video did not have an inventory item on it. It was just a financial invoice. So now what's happening is boy, I don't even see the invoice on here. Let's see. What are we missing? I went up by, here we go. Here's our first one. So the invoice gets updated. Then earlier in the video, we just saw one transaction happen a second later. This time it happened 2 seconds later, where we saw the GL batch. All right, so we still have that going on. But now we also have some additional stuff. We have the shipment getting updated, probably for some invoice quantities. The order gets updated again. I'm still not sure why that's happening. Then we have an inventory transaction happening because there's a stock item on this invoice. And then there's a GL batch related to that inventory transaction. So all in total, there's 6 transactions that happened on our ERP transaction counter when I was only expecting 1. All right. But now I'm finally done. I released the invoice. Now, coming back to the process I was expecting, I created an order, didn't make any changes to it, created a shipment off of it, created an invoice, released the invoice. Okay, now I know about the GL batch. I was really only creating 4 documents in a very simple process. I wasn't updating them. I wasn't making changes, at least on my side. I understand the system was updating things, but for my brain, I was just thinking it should have been 4 ERP transactions. But instead of 4, we wound up with, we're now at 106. 106. We started at 92. If I can do this math in my head, that's 14. So I was expecting 4, and that's only because I now know about the GL batch. I really originally was expecting 3, but we actually got 14. So, very interesting. This is just another area I thought of, and I'm now starting to wonder how much this is going on in other unexpected places. And that's why I think this might become an ongoing video series. This is part 2. We might have a part 3, etc. Now, let's come back to why this matters and why Acumatica customers need to start to pay attention to this. I could be wrong here, but I'm hearing that Acumatica is starting to care about this more just in the last few months, and even to the point where they're forcing customers to increase their license to a larger license bucket. Now, if we come back to, we did look at this in the last video, if we come back to the agreements page and we look at the most recent one from just a few months ago, we looked at in the last video this transaction tier consumption licensing. Historically, this is what they've highlighted. It's the monthly commercial transaction volume, which is in your environment. I'm in a test environment, but in your environment, you would see the number that you're licensed for listed here. This one, the monthly number of ERP transactions, wasn't really that important historically, and you can even see that in the most recent agreement. This is what's highlighted. It has a nice little chart here. It's got the buckets. If you're on a L2 license, for example, you get 10,000 commercial transactions per month. That's what everyone was getting used to. And this was a massive effort, multi-year effort in the sales cycle for VARs to get companies used to this commercial transaction licensing. You're not pricing by user, you're pricing by this thing called commercial transactions. What are commercial transactions? What's included? And in the last video, we looked at this. Here's the things that are included, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 types of transactions that are included. That was a massive effort to get people used to that. Now, finally, VARs are used to selling that. There's huge advantages to doing it this way. All right, we're aligned now on commercial transactions. Well, now, this year, we've got ERP transactions becoming important. And this is really buried. I had to search the document for ERP transactions, and I did find it down in the system recommendations. Even the title of the section is like very soft sounding, just kind of a recommendation, right? And if you scroll down here, you've got, here they are, the daily ERP transactions. Now there's no chart that's calling it out. It's just a paragraph. And let me highlight this with my fancy highlighter thing. Okay, so this is the paragraph we want to zoom in on. And I'm just going to read it. So daily ERP transactions, the ERP transaction volume, ETV, measures the number of save operations performed across all the distinct types of application entities throughout the Acumatica system. Now, if you're like me, and maybe most people, if you're reading an email, if you're reading especially a document like this, and you're just trying to get a quick understanding, you read the first sentence of a paragraph and you move on. Okay, this stands out to me, the number of save operations. And this is what I had in my head when I thought about ERP transactions, is how many times you press save. Well, it's more involved than that, as we just saw, right? It's not just save operations. Now, it does go on to explain that, but again, there's no fancy chart like there is with the commercial transactions. You have to get into the paragraph to start getting to it. So application entities are closely related to data entry screens in Acumatica. Not the same. When the system needs to save information, it must create or update a set of records related to the operation being performed. This results in at least one ERP transaction for simple operations. But there can be a few more if the save process must create or update multiple application level entities. Well, I think in our case, it was more than just a few more. It was, well, it was 10 more than we expected. We expected 4, we got 14. Let's see, going on. ERP transactions occur anytime the system needs to write to the database, not just when a user presses a save button. ERP transactions will also result from automated schedules that execute batch processes, which we saw in the last video, part 1. Okay, but I had to get into page 12 of a 19-page document, and it's on the bottom, buried in a paragraph. And I don't know. And that's why I'm doing this video. I want to highlight this because I'm hearing Acumatica cares about it more, and even to the point where they're forcing companies to increase their licensing. So, for example, if we come back to this one, which is more highlighted in the document, it's got a nice color section highlight here, and it's got this nice chart. If I'm back on that L2 license that I mentioned earlier with 10,000 commercial transactions a month, I might be completely fine from a commercial transaction perspective, and yet Acumatica can force me up to an L3 or an L4, and I wish that they would also include on here the ERP transaction volume. I don't even know what those are. I think you have to go ask your VAR for that. But they can force you up to a higher license if you're exceeding your ERP transaction volume. Now, why the change? Why all of a sudden, it seems like it's earlier this year, like a few months ago, that this started happening? I wonder why. Now, this is kind of speculation. It is pure speculation on my part. I have no inside information on this, but I don't think it's that hard to figure out. This is my hunch. If you Google Acumatica Zach Nelson, you will find this article here. It is from a few months ago, April 2024, and you'll see that Zach Nelson is now on the board of Acumatica. Who is Zach Nelson? Zach Nelson had over 30 years of experience with Sun Microsystems, blah, 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 Oracle. He took the helm of NetSuite in 2002 and served as CEO for 15 years. So, Zach Nelson is Mr. NetSuite. And Acumatica has always wanted to be NetSuite, in my opinion. Historically, their entire existence, they've talked about NetSuite. But when I talk to partners, especially partners who were doing NetSuite, and they came over to Acumatica, I would hear two things consistently. First thing, they like the Acumatica technology better. You can do more with it. It's more flexible. It's more powerful, etc. NetSuite's kind of, you're more handcuffed with NetSuite. You end up having to do a lot more with APIs. Okay, that hasn't changed. The second thing I would hear is NetSuite was always this way, but even more so once they got acquired by Oracle, because Oracle has had this reputation for decades. They're really good at getting people in the front door, but then there's a huge train of people going out the back door because Oracle's just famous for this. They get companies in, and then year 3, year 4, year 5 of the contract, the price might even double or do something crazy. They're really good at doing that. So, that was a second thing I would consistently hear from VARs. They like that, basically, they like that Acumatica is not NetSuite. Well, now you've got the former 15-year-long CEO of NetSuite joining the board of Acumatica a few months ago, or at least it was announced a few months ago. And actually, it does look like, so this article's from April, but the change was from March 2024. Here's the board of directors. And so Zach Nelson is one of 2, 4, 6, 8 board members on the Acumatica board. That seems like a pretty big coincidence to me that this ERP transaction thing has become important. But of course, who knows for sure, right? But yikes. I'm nervous. I'm nervous just about the future of Acumatica because, in my opinion, one of their huge selling points was that they were not NetSuite. And now with Zach Nelson on the board, it sure seems like they are becoming NetSuite more and more. And that, from a sales perspective at least, and licensing, which is what ERP Transactions is related to, that is not a good thing. So I think it's up to us in the Acumatica community to make noise about this. And that's why I think for me, this is part 2 in what might become an ongoing series of videos to highlight what's going on with ERP Transactions and make sure that it makes sense and we're just not getting gouged from a pricing perspective. All right, that's all I've got for now, but we'll see. We might have more in the future.